Let's tour this original Ossipoff design home in Waialae Nui Ridge. And look at those views. Ossipoff. If you follow Oahu architecture, that one name just made you stop scrolling. And if it means nothing to you yet, stay with me, because over the next few minutes, it's going to completely change how you see this home. Here's my promise to you. I'm not going to walk you room to room saying, and here's a bedroom, and here's a bathroom. I'm going to tell you who Vladimir Ossipoff was and why his name still moves the needle on this ridge. Then I'm going to open up the real numbers on Waialae Nui Ridge, the tax roll, the recent sales, what this market is quietly telling buyers and sellers, so that by the end, you understand exactly what kind of opportunity you're looking at. Whether you're buying on this ridge or you already own here, you'll walk away knowing something the listing photos can never show you. Let's get into it. So, the architect. Vladimir Ossipoff was born in 1907 in Vladivostok, back when it was part of the Russian Empire. But he actually grew up in Tokyo, and as a young man, before he ever set foot in the States, he watched Frank Lloyd Wright's Imperial Hotel rise in Tokyo, and that stayed with him for the rest of his life. He studied architecture at Berkeley, and in 1936, he opened his own firm right here on the islands. Over the next 60 years, his hands touched more than 1,000 projects across Oahu, from public landmarks to private homes. People started calling him the master of Hawaiian modern architecture, and honestly, the name fits. But here's the part I love most. In 1964, Ossipoff stood up and publicly declared what he called a war on ugliness. He could not stand the cheap, lazy boxes going up that ignored the land they sat on. His whole belief was that a home should work with Hawaii, not fight it. Pull the outside in. Let the trade winds move through the house instead of sealing it up. Use the natural light. Frame the view on purpose, like a painting. A Japanese sensitivity to nature wrapped around clean, modern lines. And this ridge holds one of the best pockets of mid-century modern homes anywhere on Oahu, with a handful of them tied to Ossipoff himself. Now that Ossipoff name comes from the listing, and it is a great story. If the architect is part of what you're paying for, you'll just want to confirm the details, the permits, and the records. And that's exactly the kind of homework I do for my clients. And if you're finding this breakdown useful, go ahead and subscribe. There's a new neighborhood every week and a lot more of Oahu for us to walk through together. Now look at what that design philosophy actually does inside these walls. The ceilings lift and vault overhead, the floors are hardwood, and the living space opens straight out to an outdoor area off the main level. That is the Ossipoff idea in miniature, indoor and outdoor blurring into one. On paper, this is around 1,300 square feet of living space, which sounds modest. But it lives much bigger because the whole design pushes your eye outward to Diamond Head and the coastline instead of boxing you in. And the view is a big part of why you're here. From this ridge, the hillside and the coastline open up in front of you. That bright, elevated feeling you only get up high. It is something no future neighbor can ever build away. The first bathroom keeps a classic tub and it pulls daylight in through a skylight. Small detail, but it tells you the original design cared about light in every room, not just the ones with a window. There are 3 bedrooms. 2 of them sit on this level and share a bath. The one facing the street makes an easy flex room. The primary bedroom is the larger one at the back, with its own bath and a real run of storage. Let's zoom out to the whole neighborhood, because this is where you find out if this ridge is actually worth it. Over the past year, the typical single-family home on Waialae Nui Ridge has sold for right around $2 million. Now compare that to Oahu as a whole, where the median sits closer to $1.1 million. So this one ridge trades at nearly double the island, which means this listing at $1,950,000 is actually sitting below what the neighborhood normally commands. The land, the views, and the name carry the value. But here's the honest tension, and most agents won't say this part out loud. This neighborhood is tight. On a ridge of about 575 homes, there are only ever a couple of listings for sale at any one time. And over the past year, only about 10 single-family homes actually sold. That's less than one a month. With supply that thin, you would expect a feeding frenzy. And yet this market has gotten selective. And the lesson is written all over the homes that did not sell. In the last year, 7 sellers on this ridge pulled their listings without ever closing. One of them, a big 7-bedroom, sat on the market over 230 days, even after the seller cut the price by more than $250,000 and still walked away without a deal. Another owner tried twice, dropped the price $200,000 between attempts, and still couldn't get it done. Now here's the encouraging part, especially if you're drawn to a home that needs a little love. On this ridge, condition is not the barrier most people assume it is. One of the fastest sales of the whole year was a small dated home that hadn't been touched in decades, and it still sold over asking in about 2 weeks. Think about that. No remodel, and buyers were still competing for it. Because up here, what people are really buying is the land, the elevation, and the location. And they're glad to bring their own vision to the house itself. So if you've ever been told a home has to be magazine ready to sell on a street like this, the data says otherwise. The demand here runs deep, and it runs deeper than just turnkey homes. And for the buyer who's open to a little work, the price per square foot tells the real story. The dated homes on this ridge have traded as low as around $800 a square foot, while the fully renovated ones have sold north of $1,200. That gap right there is the opportunity. That's the value a buyer gets to create by taking a home with good bones and bringing it up to its potential. And that's exactly the lens to use on a home like this one. You're not buying it by the square foot, you're buying the land, more than 1/3 of an acre, the largest lot of any recent sale on this ridge, in a location with the architect and the views already attached. The total price comes in under what this neighborhood typically sells for. You bring the renovation, and the upside is yours to create instead of being priced in before you ever walk through the door. Downstairs opens into a second generous living area with even more storage, the kind of flexible square footage you can reimagine into a media room, a studio, or a proper work-from-home setup. More raw potential to make your own. There's one more number that sets this ridge apart from the rest of the island, and it matters whether you're buying or selling. Across Oahu as a whole, homes have generally been selling right around full asking price. Up here, the pattern has been a little different. Buyers have consistently been able to negotiate, with recent sales closing a few percent under the last asking price. So if you're buying on this ridge, know that there has been real room at the table to make a deal. And if you're selling, that's exactly why pricing it right from day one matters so much. Get that number right, and in a neighborhood this tight, the buyers are waiting. So here's the question that really matters on a home like this. Why is a place that's ready for updating asking just under $2 million? Pull the tax roll, and it answers itself. The county assesses this property at just over $2 million total, but watch how that splits. The land alone is assessed at roughly $1.7 million. The structure, the actual house, only about $345,000. So more than 80% of this property's value is the land and the position. That is the definition of a land play. You're not really buying the house. You're buying this piece of ridge, and the home becomes your canvas. And here's a number that should make any buyer lean in. The list price is actually below the assessed value, by around $80,000. In Hawaii, where the county's assessments usually lag behind the real market, finding a home listed under its assessed value is not something you see every day. A couple more facts that matter for your wallet. This home sits in Flood Zone X, which is the lowest risk flood designation there is, so there's no lender-required flood insurance, and that can quietly save you thousands of dollars a year compared to a home down in a flood zone. The zoning is R7.5, standard single-family residential, and here's what stands out. That zoning is built around a 7,500 square foot minimum lot. This lot is over 16,000, more than double. On a ridge where the land is the entire asset, having that much of it is the headline. What you ultimately do with that extra room is a conversation between you, your plans, and the city, but the space is there. Now, for the buyers who feel completely locked out of this neighborhood, listen closely because this is your way in. Remember those 7 sellers who pulled their listings without selling? They average about 120 days on the market before giving up. Those owners haven't disappeared, they've just gone quiet. And those are exactly the off-market opportunities I track for my clients. So if you've been watching and nothing on the open market has fit, reach out to me directly. There's a quiet layer of inventory on this ridge that doesn't show up online. And one insider tip while we're here: when you spot a fresh listing with very low days on market, always ask whether it has been listed before. Sometimes a home that quietly sat for months gets canceled and pulled off the market for some time and then relisted again. The days on market counter resets to zero. Knowing the true history is real leverage, and it's the kind of thing a good agent pulls for you before you ever write an offer. Back around at the front of the home, there's a dedicated laundry space with the washer and dryer, and honestly, more tucked away storage around this property than you'd ever guess from the square footage. For a home of this era, that's one of those quiet wins you come to appreciate. So let's bring it home. What you've got here is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath single family home from 1961, around 1,300 square feet of living space on a third of an acre lot, with Diamond Head coastline, golf course, and sunset views, carrying the name of one of the most important architects in Hawaii's history, and listed below both its assessed value and its neighborhood's typical price. Yes, it needs work, but on this ridge, that isn't the problem. That's the opportunity. You're buying the land, the views, and a piece of design history, and you get to write the next chapter. If you want to know what a home like this is really worth, or what your own place on this ridge could sell for in today's market, that is exactly what I do every single day. Comment below or send me a message, and let's walk through your numbers together. I'm Oksana with Island Living Oahu. Subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.